Show, don't tell. You've probably heard this 1,000 times, but why is it so hard to actually pull it off? I used to struggle with this too, and it left my early scripts feeling flat and forgettable. So in this video, I'll show you exactly what show, don't tell actually means, the common mistakes that most writers make when it comes to doing it, and the simple techniques to make your writing instantly more cinematic. So what does show, don't tell really mean? One of the biggest misconceptions is that it just means writing scenes with minimal dialogue, like you're supposed to tell your story entirely through action. But here's the truth. Show, don't tell has nothing to do with whether you use dialogue or not. Because honestly, one way of showing is by using dialogue. I mean, most movies are about 75% dialogue, and yet they still show rather than tell. Most writers don't struggle because they don't know how to show. They struggle because they don't know what it is they're actually showing. So now let me, show you exactly what I mean by using one of the best opening scenes of all time, The Social Network.
Well, which is the easiest to get into?
Why would you ask me that?
I was just asking.
I think you asked me that because you think the final club that's easiest to get into is the one where I'll have the best chance.
What?
You asked me which one was the easiest to get into because you think that that's the one where I'll have the best chance.
You're obsessed with finals clubs. You have finals clubs OCD and you need to see someone about it who will prescribe you some sort of medication. You don't care if the side effects may include blindness.
Final clubs, not finals clubs.
If I asked you what's being shown here, you might say something like, well, Mark doesn't know how to talk to girls, or Mark is just mad that Erica thinks that he can't get into a finals club. But that's just scratching the surface. That's just the telling part. The showing is about going a layer deeper into this. What's being shown is Mark's insecurity. You know, he's shy, he's defensive, and he's uncomfortable in his own skin. And he's kind of a jerk. That's what we're being shown. Nobody in the scene gets up and says, hey, Mark, you're socially awkward and insecure. Yeah, that would be telling blatantly. What makes it work so well is that the audience can just see it. You know, we draw the conclusion ourselves, because the fact is, there might actually be someone who's watching this and is thinking to themselves, wow, this guy's really good at talking to girls. You know, what's her deal? Like, I know that sounds crazy, but it's the truth. Everything is open to interpretation. Now, I know you might be thinking that that's crazy, but that's the whole point. Telling instructs the audience how to feel, while showing lets them decide for themselves. It's not about forcing one specific interpretation. It's about giving your audience something to interpret in the first place. So how can you apply this to your own screenplay? If you're part of my coaching program, you might be familiar with this example. But imagine you're writing about a guy who needs some money, and you want the audience to know that he's a bad person. So how do you show this? I mean, you just have him join an Alcoholics Anonymous group and say, hello, my name is Rick, and I'm a bad person. No. You show him robbing a bank or stealing from a relative. Just to clarify, you can have dialogue. It's not about whether or not he's talking, it's how he goes about it. You know, does he justify what he's doing? Does he apologize to everyone about it? What matters is that you never outright tell the audience how to feel. You just let them watch and make up their own mind. Even with something like addiction, you know, you don't need a character to get up and say, well, drugs are gonna ruin your life, because that defeats the whole purpose of staying around for the rest of the story. You've already given them the answer. Instead, show how drugs are ruining their lives. Show them blowing off friends or losing their jobs, their relationships, and just everything that ever mattered to them because of their addiction. The audience is going to get the message. Your audience is a lot smarter than you think. The more you can trust them to read between the lines, the more invested they'll be in your story, which brings me to one of the biggest mistakes writers make with show, don't tell. Imagine a movie where a character rolls into the scene with a wheelchair, and the first thing he says is, I can't walk. Seriously? Did the writer really think we wouldn't get that from the wheelchair? And this is the root of writers' tendency to tell. They don't trust the audience to put two and two together, so they over-explain things. If you want your audience to actually enjoy your story, you have to trust them. Because when you do, you make them an active participant. You know, they're solving, they're interpreting things, and they're feeling everything with you. Let me show you a great example of this. Take a look at this moment from Spider-Man.
Would it be so dangerous to let Mary Jane know how much you care? Everybody else knows.
I'll be right back.
messages.
Sing your song at the beat.
Peter doesn't just stand up and say, uh-oh, you were right. The Green Goblin probably knows that I like Mary Jane as well. I have to go and save her at once. We can just figure it out from that look of horror on his face and, you know, the fact that he goes to call her right after. You know, he doesn't have to say this, and neither do your characters. If you trust the audience, they'll feel more involved. You know, they'll feel more engaged and way more invested in whatever happens next. By the way, I'm going to be doing a video where I roast people's dialogue. So if you want to be a part of it, submit your dialogue from one of your own scenes by clicking the link below. But dialogue does still play a huge role when it comes to show don't tell. I'm going to show you exactly what I mean with one of the most unintentionally famous examples, The Room.
Gotta tell you about something.
Shoot, Danny.
It's about Lisa.
Go on.
She's beautiful. She looks great in her red dress. I think I'm in love with her.
Go on.
I know she doesn't like me because sometimes she's mean to me, but sometimes when I'm around her, I feel like I want to kiss her and tell her that I love her. I don't know. I'm just confused.
This is clearly an example of telling, but it's not just the dialogue itself that's the issue. In fact, if this exact line was delivered in a different context, like if he was using it to distract Johnny, or if he was secretly like a stalker, it might actually work. So let's go beyond the fact that he's just blatantly saying the emotions out loud. The real problem with this dialogue is that it isn't believable. And I don't just mean believable in the sense that a real human person would never say these things in real life, even though that might actually be true. It just doesn't even feel like dialogue. You know, it feels like two characters taking turns reading lines at each other. When you have two characters speaking, their dialogue needs to feed off of each other. There should be a transfer of energy. You know, their emotions should be bouncing back and forth like a tennis match. If someone storms in screaming at you, you're probably not going to respond by saying, oh, okay, I see. Or maybe you're just calmer than I am and you will just not say anything at all. But I'll never forget this piece of advice that Jake Gyllenhaal got from Chris Cooper.
Take after take, I was like, oh, I'm killing this. Like, I'm just screaming and yelling. And he comes up to me and he goes, I don't know what you're doing. You're just yelling at me. Just listen to what I'm saying to you. I just listened. And then as he talked, it really started to piss me off. Like what he was saying started to piss me off. And then I was like, oh my God, I was riding a real wave.
That's what real dialogue is. It's not just saying lines, it's reacting. So how do you apply this in your own writing? I actually stumbled on this by a happy accident, but it changed my dialogue forever. I was writing a scene where an artist is working on a project and his girlfriend interrupts him. In the middle of me writing this, well, someone came into my room and interrupted me. And instantly, I was noticing how I was feeling. You know, I was getting tempted to lash out. You know, I wanted to start yelling at them. I was getting mad, whatever. But then it hit me. Instead of guessing how my character should react, I just let the emotions I was feeling write the scene for me. I can't even tell you how much easier it became just to let the words flow. I was able to capture what the characters were feeling so much easier because I was literally feeling the same exact thing. Whenever you have a scene with two characters, before you write a single line, ask yourself, what are these characters feeling? Put yourself right into their shoes and imagine how you'd respond if you felt the emotions they were feeling. Because if you can channel those emotions into your scene, your dialogue won't just sound real, it's gonna be real. But how do we actually capture these emotions in a way that hits the audience on a deep, visceral level? See, it's one thing to know what characters are feeling, but it's something else entirely to express those feelings in a way that's believable and emotionally charged. To do this right, you have to understand something deeper, the psychology of your characters. Let me show you one of the most powerful examples from any film in the last decade.
If you don't return the sign, I gotta take it out of your paycheck. Are we clear? Listen, I'm trying to help you, okay? And I'll tell you something else. The other guys, they don't feel comfortable around you, Arthur.
The Joker's boss is just ripping him apart. You know, he accuses him of lying. He calls him creepy. And he says that he's gonna have to pay for that missing sign. But how does Joker respond to this? He just smiles. That's it. You know, there's no yelling. It's really off-putting smile. A smile that tells us everything we need to know about him right then and there. Because if you look closer, it's not the smile of someone who's okay. You know, it's not cocky or charming. It's a smile laced with pain, with the haunting realization that this man is on the verge of a very psychotic breakdown. He doesn't have to scream out, "I'm going insane. Why is everything so unfair to me?" His smile says it all for us, and that's what makes it so powerful. It's not the dialogue, it's not the exposition, it's the contrast between what we see on the surface and what we know is happening underneath, because we get it. We figure it out for ourselves. So how do you do this in your own story? Figure out what your character is truly feeling in the moment, and then express that through action, behavior, or body language. If they're hurting, don't just have them say it. Show it in the way they grip the table, the way that they fake a laugh that doesn't quite land, or they say "I'm fine" without looking anyone in the eyes. As much as it is possible to show a dialogue, I'm not gonna lie, it is very powerful if you can do it without it. But there is also an extremely effective way to do this with dialogue, and it's probably one of the most underrated techniques when it comes to showing instead of telling. The key to showing with dialogue is just to make sure that the characters are saying something different than their dialogue is saying. To show you what I mean, look at this scene from Jerry Maguire.
"I will never take advantage of you in that way again.
Good.
You walked out on a job for me. This is how I repay you. Can this be right?"
Exactly. And I know that this is one of those times when you need to be alone with your thoughts and think about everything that's gone wrong and how to fix it and you know, just be alone. Alone. Alone, alone, alone. Alone.
"You want to go out to dinner?"
I know a great place.
If you couldn't tell, Dorothy is not actually glad that Jerry said any of this. What makes this so compelling is that neither of them outright says what they're really feeling. You know, they both pretend that they aren't attracted to each other. Their words say one thing, but their faces, their tone, and the subtext screams another. And that's why this scene works so well. It doesn't just hit you over the head, you know, it lets you feel the tension between them. The truth is, there's nothing crazy about anything in the exchange. You know, like, it's not like this scene is going to make you sit back and go, "Oh, well, how can I write dialogue like that?" But honestly, it should, because it feels real. You know, this is how people actually behave. They hide, they mask their emotions, they deflect. It's a defense mechanism that an actual human person would have. And if Jerry just stood up and said, "I think it would be a great idea for us to enact in romantic entanglement," it would just kind of kill the vibe, honestly. You start with the feeling and then use dialogue to filter that feeling. So how do you do this yourself? This is another technique I like to cover a lot in my coaching. If one of your characters is feeling one way, simply have the dialogue be the exact opposite. This is usually to do with feelings that make them somewhat vulnerable. So if they're scared to do something, they might pretend to be confident about it. If a movie makes them feel sad, instead of crying, they might just run over to the TV and say, "Oh, this movie sucks," just so that they can avoid it and hold it together. This little reflex of hiding how we feel is one of the most human things you can add to your characters. Because when you do this, you're not telling the audience how the character feels, you're just letting them feel it for themselves. And that's what makes for irresistible storytelling. There's also another huge mistake that writers make when it comes to telling instead of showing. Imagine you have two characters, they're brother and sister, and their parents died when they were little kids. A lot of writers might try to deliver this by having the sister run in and say to the brother, "Hello, Arnold, can I have a glass of water? Also, don't forget, today is the 14th anniversary of the day Mom and Dad died." Like, okay, yes, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not as much as you'd think. You'd be shocked at how often writers force information into dialogue like this. This goes back to believability. The characters would never say that to each other. If anything, it would be much more subtle. Like, maybe the sister just walks in and goes, "Are you ready?" And then the next scene is the two of them visiting her grave. The trick is to deliver exposition through character. Make sure your characters are speaking the way that they would actually speak, especially when it comes to deeply personal things like this. One good way to do this is using humor, which works really well in shows like Severin.
Okay,
Like,
you actually owe me this.
do I?
Yep. You remember that time when we were kids and I was just generally a way better sibling than you?
Oh, must have slipped my mind.
This just makes it feel natural, even if you are blatantly stating information. Unfortunately, there's no silver bullet for this. Like, I can't give you a one-size-fits-all because the key is making sure that your characters are the truest version of themselves in every scene, every line of dialogue, and every interaction. But it's actually good news because there's no secret to this. The secret is really just making your characters who they really are from yourself. And also, before you panic, telling is sometimes necessary. Like, you're working in a visual medium. Sometimes there's just things the audience needs to know that you have no other way to tell them. Like, think about Star Wars. The first 10 minutes is literally a crawl of exposition, and it works. Just see if you can find a way to deliver it in a way that at least feels natural. Like, my favorite example of this is in The Matrix. The first half of the movie is basically pure exposition, but because Neo genuinely has no idea what's going on, we believe the explanations. You know, he's not just a mouthpiece for the audience, he's a vessel for all the confusion, the curiosity, and the disbelief we're all feeling. So, yeah, sometimes you do have to tell instead of show. Just make sure it's intentional, not laziness. And hey, if you really want to put your dialogue to the test, click the link below and submit a scene of your own for me to roast in a video. And I'm talking full on, no holding back, brutal honesty. This is not for the faint of heart. So if you're up for it, click the link below, submit your scene, and I'll see you in the roast. And by the way, if you want to see everything I've ever learned about screenwriting, click this video here.